you've said that you no longer are convinced that dads are hard to engage. A few years ago, you might have agreed with that line, but now you don't. What's changed your mind?
I think it was the launching of the Wholehearted Dad, which is a Strong Dad's unique program. And I had been working in other organizations where dads were really hard to engage. And I think there was this stereotype that was kind of reinforced with each other in those that were practicing that there must be something wrong with dads. And they're not coming to our facility or our program or whatever. Like, we made this thing, why aren't they coming? Whereas I kind of did a bit more, I don't know, conversation, working with, understanding what maybe they were looking for. And I didn't even advertise, and I got 5 dads come along to the Wholehearted Dad Program. So that, for me, sort of changed my perspective of, well, it's not necessarily the dads, maybe it's the facilities and the programs that are being offered. And maybe we need to readjust and reframe our view on this, that, you know, not if you build it, they will come, but what are you actually building? So yeah, that's kind of changed the way that I think of it, and I'm trying to actually bring that into the fatherhood area, industry, if you will. And at the last Australian Fatherhood Symposium, one of the leaders of our industry, who actually started, have you heard of SMS for Dads?
No, I don't think I have, actually.
Richard Fletcher is his name. He's the founder of SMS for Dads, which is actually global, a really big deal. And I was telling him about my new program, and he said, I blew his mind. He's like, you've really surprised me. Firstly, he didn't think that I looked like a nurse. So he's like, he did not the idea that I had of someone who is a nurse, big kind of hairy looking dude. Secondly, he was surprised that social media was my way of recruiting and not advertising. And thirdly, he was surprised that dads wanted to pay for my program. And he just couldn't get his head around it. There's this kind of perception that you got to make it free, you got to reduce as many barriers as you can to try and help dads engage. But I believe there's been a shift. I have noticed that there's a shift, and there are engaged dads, and I'm one of them. And they want to be involved, and they want to level up and be included and have programs that are designed for dads by dads. So that's where I'm having success.
Yeah, great. So, yeah, what are dads like specifically telling you or being attracted to about your program, and then compared to, say, other organisations or messaging that's out there, what are the dads you're seeing saying that they actually want from a space like Strong Dads?
I've noticed the dads that come to me are similar to me. And so I think that really has a big thing to do with it. They're not necessarily sporty dads who are in a sporting organisation and might be attracted to, for example, Working Out Dads, which is another program that I am a facilitator of by Tweddle, the Early Parenting Centre, in combination with advocating for children with disabilities. And they sort of, that program was probably the most well-researched and funded and amazing program that ever existed and exists for dads. And they believed that you needed to have this kind of gimmick or something to get dads involved. So, you know, you've heard of pints and ponytails, for example, because, you know, blokes drink beer, so let's get them. But again, I think that didn't come from sort of a research background. It was just more of a stereotype. Let's just roll with that. And I think there's there's another one. Anyway, the point is that that it's appealing to the stereotypes and to the masses when there's nuances within the whole fatherhood. Well, the whole of men, really, when we've got different interests and needs and personalities, and I think it kind of works better when we've got a mesh or a mosaic of these different programs that appeal to the thinkers like you and I, and not just the sporty types or the there's churches and a lot of sort of dads groups sort of have come from church organizations and areas of caring, but they're kind of underlying faith-based and not necessarily what others are after, I guess. But yeah, did that answer that question? I feel like I rambled.
Did. That's all right, all good. No, I think that not one size fits all approach is a really crucial aspect of that, especially now that hopefully we're slowly getting a few more of these differing types of programs that are being set up, and that can overall sort of encompass a bigger number of fathers overall, which I think is a really important and hopefully exciting thing for the future. I've seen that you've got the Wholehearted Dad Program. Can you just run me through, well, I guess what it is, who it's for, and what actually happens during that program?
I can indeed. I want to read this because I was writing. I've had a couple of local psychologists actually reach out to me, and I was like, oh, maybe I should actually make some proper words, academic type words to provide to them, because they want to refer dads to me. So this is what I wrote down. The Wholehearted Dad Program is an early intervention program, early intervention and ongoing support model for men across the fatherhood journey. So not just at the very beginning. So from pregnancy through to early parenting and beyond, and it aims to strengthen secure attachment, which is kind of like the gold standard that we're aiming for in parenting for the first 1,000 days. I'd say even more, 2,000 days, by better engaging fathers within existing antenatal and early parenting systems. So it complements hospital antenatal education by supporting dads who are already engaged, but struggling with isolation, sidelining, overwhelm, emotional shutdown, and recurring stress patterns once parenting begins. And we do this by nervous system education, emotional regulation tools, goal-centered accountability, and evidence-informed insights into male identity and intergenerational patterns in fatherhood. And I guess the goal is to embed proactive, father-inclusive support into perinatal care pathways, so dads are supported early, and not only in crisis or reducing the burden of disease on our community and overwhelmed healthcare systems, because that's where I see it as well. In my nursing role, I work in mental health as a nurse, as well as general medicine. And I'm essentially trying to keep dads out of there.
Moving into the, I guess, more of the mental health space. Personally, I've got a 2.5-year-old son and expecting another baby in about 6 weeks' time now. So
exciting!
Right in this, in that territory myself. When you think about the dads that you see early on, what are they actually struggling with beneath the surface?
I think it's identity is the core to it all, because that then has a knock-on effect to everything else and your mental health. But what I've identified and what I work with in the Wholehearted Dad are the 4 traps of fatherhood. So the provider trap is where your identity is just I work. This is my role. I have my job to support and to provide, and that's all I was shown. That's all we were taught by our dads, and that's all I know. And I don't really understand how to engage with services, if there are services out there, firstly, and then how to figure out how to do it well. It really comes, and it gets to a point for most blokes when they're a clear and present danger or a crisis point where they're like, whoa, what's wrong? Like, how can I get help before they ask for help? And so there is a bit of a culture change that, we're trying to address as men before these programs really will find more success and more integration with healthcare, which is that goal again. So yeah, the provider trap is really around identity, and lone wolf trap is the second one, which is, again, not asking for help, just doing it by myself because that's how my dad did it. That's how he taught me to do it. Boys don't cry, blah-de-blah, all those kind of toxic male traits that we have just been taught and shown, and trying to change now, trying to say that's not actually healthy for us, and we need to, if we want to be 50-50, that's the expectation in our society around parenting and care and participation in household chores, then we need to have a support system that enables that as well. It's not just you're by yourself, but women are able to sort of look after and support and connect with each other because they've been doing that. They've had role models previously in their generations before who have balanced work and care roles. Whereas we're kind of the pioneers where we're starting to do that for ourselves, but we don't have that social support that's been ingrained in our male culture that has happened for females because of the nature of their caring, I guess. And so now that we're coming into more caring roles as dads, we need to up our social skills and connect with each other a bit more and step away from that lone wolf trap. And the control trap is the third trap of modern fatherhood, which is really suppressing a lot of your feelings and shutting it down and feeling like you have to control everything, and it comes out in bursts of anger and frustration and shutdown and rigidity and stuff like that. So really unhealthy coping mechanism, trying to control everything and everyone, or hold yourself together, control it. So that stoic masculinity, which again isn't healthy. We need to be a bit more embracing and aware of our own feelings, because for a lot of guys they're not even in touch with what's going on inside, and then able to talk about it, name it, and let those feelings pass through. So that's a lot of the emotional work that we do. And the competence trap is the fourth one, and that's when around you're not quite there yet, when your kids get about 3 or 4 or even 5, and the feelings get a bit more complicated and it gets a bit tougher. I'm not saying this is going to be you, Aiden, but we're just, as blokes, we're not really used to that. Our dads haven't role modeled the high level of socializing, communication, and emotional intelligence that's necessary for dealing with tiny people and big feelings. And so we do a lot of that and parenting sort of knowledge and experience to build that confidence and be able to go forth and be awesome dads.
No, great. I think that's sounds like a really good mix, and without, adding in too many different levels to it. I think having 4 is a good well-rounded approach for it. There's quite a bit of research, some new, some not so new, about even Australian specific research about new fathers and levels of overwhelm and anxiety that they face, especially in those first however many days or couple of years, like you were mentioning before. I think over half of new dads don't seek support when they are feeling in that overwhelmed state, and then that obviously can then lead to even more serious feelings and states of mind. And a lot of them probably don't seek that help because they, like you mentioned, sort of see it as a bit of a sign of weakness, and they should just sort of tough it out and just sort of grit their teeth and carry on. What have you found that actually helps men cross that line from saying that I'm just going to keep going the way I am, and actually then asking for help?
Good question. It depends on the personality, and like everything, it's very individual. And a lot of the times, like I mentioned, I would say crisis point. It's a point of no return. There's been something where it's just the straw that's broken the camel's back, and it's been a point of overwhelm, of isolation, and realizing they don't have a support network around them, and that they can't just rely on their partner anymore, which is pretty traditional for us blokes as well, because they've got a lot of stuff going on. It's there's a lady that I'm working with, Ellie Taylor from Sydney, and she's the author of the book Becoming Us, and I'm doing her facilitator training at the moment, very slowly, with all my other bits and bobs that I'm doing and jobs that I've got. I think I've got about 6 or 7 jobs, and it's while full-time dadding, by the way. It's about trying to reduce or understand what the other person's going through, because when you come into parenting, there's 2 different people and there's 2 different journeys, and there's sometimes a lack of understanding and awareness of the others, and it's about being able to identify what you're going through and be able to build your own resilience to therefore be better for the family unit as well, and essentially keep the relationship strong and stable and together. Because things do definitely change, and I think there's a lack of conversation around that for men, which we're starting to see change. I'm in touch with researchers who are pushing for GPs, for example, to have more conversations, or just healthcare providers in general, like your fine self, to have conversations with young men before they're adults, not just young ladies, and say, hey, are you thinking about fatherhood? Well, you probably should be. Is that something that's on the cards for you? Have you been educated in the health areas of it, for example? I don't know. There's heaps of different areas on things that you can talk about, but it's something that just doesn't happen for us blokes at the moment.
No, you're right. Yeah, it's a bit of a missing in action sort of thing.
Yeah.
I find that that point you brought up before, it's a tricky one to navigate, and I think for a lot of new dads is especially say through pregnancy and birth and the early days of a baby arriving, it's rightly so. There should be a lot of attention on the mother because they've just gone through pretty amazing and intense thing, but that also then sort of further retreats the male into, no, I better not ask for help or bring up any of these issues that I might be having, because I don't want to burden them even further than what they already are. And I think that's a really tricky sort of maze to navigate in terms of getting those external support networks in place, rather than, like you said, just having the dad being the person who he relies on is the mum, because that's not fair on the mum either. So it's a tricky one of knowing how to get that into practice.
It is, and that's where I come in, and it's at the moment the Wholehearted Dad is more holistic in its approach. It's not I'm coming in as the support for the dad. I'm coming in as, your biggest cheerleader. And I'm saying, yeah, you need more than just me on your team. You need your GP, you need your counselor, you need friends, or you can connect with the other dads in the Wholehearted Dad program so that we can start building like-minded friendships and relationships. And I've noticed that there's a lot of communication skills that need to be worked on as well from the COVID sort of pandemic that really sent us into further isolation and less practice of socializing. It's really just about getting someone like me to hold your hand and say, okay, let's just walk this path together. And this is kind of where I might have a bit more information or knowledge or experience or whatever as someone who's just walked it previously, not an expert, but just someone who's maybe had a crack at it already. So yeah, the answer is it's very individual to see why people come into the program or what causes them to come into the program. I've noticed dads with a few more complications, not complications, how do I explain it? Sort of maybe kids with special needs. There's just a little bit more stress and pressure on them to be more involved or to be more engaged and active, and they just don't have the support networks around them to provide help and assistance for them to be able to, then provide for their family. So, the old saying is you can't pour from an empty cup. So it's essentially about meeting your own needs first and making that a bit of a priority, which is where I come in and say, okay, are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting enough exercise? Are you getting enough nutrition? Well, let's work on some basics. Let's break it all down in a really helpful, not like stressful or shaming kind of way. It's just I'm right here with you, man. I know what you're going through. Let's figure out the best and most efficient sort of way for you to get back on track.
So you mentioned the identity shift before as being probably the key pillar, I guess, of what can be behind a lot of the change. So you also speak about identity repair. What do you use, or what do you think is a good way to shift that identity for someone who's potentially just become a new father or is midway through that journey?
There's no single answer for that, I don't think. Just as the same as as we're all individuals and we've all got different personalities and thoughts and thought patterns. I think that identity shift is really challenging, and I don't really have a good answer for you. I think
I was hoping you'd be out of a silver bullet to fix everything for everyone.
I don't. I wish I did, man.
That's fine. It's tricky. Put you on the spot there. A bit of a tricky one.
So
would you? Yeah, go on.
In short, no. In a long answer to that, I don't have one. A short answer, but a lot of my inspiration comes from Dr. Nicole LePera, who is the author of How to Do the Work. Just looking at her book on my shelf, and she's called the holistic psychologist on the social media, on the socials. Really recommend you guys checking her out. That's where I get a lot of my information on self-healing and self-identity. So that's kind of what I draw on for the identity stuff. And I think the biggest thing about the Wholehearted Dad is realizing that it's not a 6-week program that you're going to be right and ready in 6 weeks, mate, and we'll fix you up and we'll get you back out there. it's really like the human existence is really up and down and back and forth, and so is this program. And it's long. It's a year long. And one of my dads is just coming up to the 6-month mark, and it's very exciting. He's the first one through, and
Cool.
he's loving it, but we're not necessarily going to see leaps and bounds in certain areas, because there's the 5 key areas that we kind of work on. So it's the mental health, the physical health, emotional health, social health, and the relational health. And so it depends on what we're working on at the time as to what might be needing a bit more care and attention. But like life, it can go up and down and back and forth, and it's just kind of a bit all over the place. But it's about building those skills and that resilience in the different areas to try and self-heal and self-improve. And so that identity thing, it's not going to be you do this thing and you get this result. And so the thing that worked for me that I've tried to share with some of these dads is really just a kind of repetition, like writing it on the wall and saying, I am worthy. I am wholehearted. That's where the name comes from, because I used to say this to myself every day. I used to look on the wall and say, I am calm. No, I am, what did I say? I am happy. I am healthy. I am wholehearted. 3 things that I used to say to myself every day when I'm about 10, 15 years ago, when I was in the dark night of the soul and going through a breakup and really struggling and blah, blah. And that really helped me shift my identity around the victim, from the victim mentality to, no, I'm actually good. I'm wholehearted, which means I'm worthy of being loved. And so that, instead of seeking it from someone else, it helped me identify that I actually love myself. So it's a kind of it's a bit of a surprise for dads when they come into the Wholehearted Dad program. They're kind of like, okay, I'm here to be a better dad or whatever. And I'm like, surprise, it's actually about loving yourself. And they're like, wait, what? So something we don't really talk about in male culture. And that's why the program is so long, and it takes a lot of time. You can't sort of reset your nervous system without doing it slowly. If you try and do it quickly, it just gets overwhelmed and it snaps back into the comfort zone. The other thing to this long answer to your question about identity is the other source that I draw upon is another book that I'm looking at is by Steve Biddulph. Are you familiar with Steve?
No, I haven't heard of his name. No.
He's like I imagine him as the Australian dad. He's kind of like Richard Fletcher before. He's the older gentleman who they were the really early guys who were thinking about this stuff way before any of us on social media were talking with each other and talking about it. And he's a Tasmanian psychologist, I believe, and he wrote a book called Manhood back in '93, and it really shifted things for me around identity. And why were there billboards with derogatory male bashing content on them? And why do men have to be the butt of the joke? And why did the dad in the sitcoms have to be bumbling idiots? And so from that book, I think there was a bit of a slow burn, quiet revolution, because yeah, there is the patriarchy. Yeah, we have to acknowledge that. But there was this change where guys like you and I would be like, "Hey, hon, let's do better. Let's try and have a conversation, bring some like-minded men in, and actually express ourselves in a healthy way."
Yeah, great. I think I'll have to check out that book, because that sounds like quite before his time, I guess, with a few of those concepts.
Yeah. So then it's now called The New Manhood. I think that was a 2020 or 2019 publication. Is the revised version. It's got a picture of a tie burning, because like the burning of the bra, this is the quiet burning of the tie, a revolution for us men.
There you go. Well, if you don't mind, a bit more, getting a little bit more personal. You sort of touched on it then, but how did your identity shift yourself when you became a father?
It was surprisingly natural for me, and I was heavily influenced by the book Manhood by Steve Biddulph when I read it when I was about 17. And that really put me on a trajectory of being a caring male. And I didn't subscribe to the football culture, and I didn't subscribe to toxic masculinity. In fact, I did my best to rebut, to stand up against it. And that led to the career of nursing, which, again, in a toxic masculine world would be a bit of a shame job. And for me, it wasn't an issue. And this is, all around the same time as I was studying, that we were trying to become pregnant. And there was some self-healing that was happening in my world as well, where I was really struggling with my own family identity that I was given from my family, and sort of saying, no, that's not who I am actually, and I don't agree with that label or that role that you're trying to put me in. And I ended up, because I've got 3 siblings and 2 parents, so there's another 5 people plus their partners in my family, and it was so overwhelming that I had to just disconnect to self-preserve instead of trying to share the changes that I was going through. And so that was my way of coping and dealing with my family identity. I was becoming a nurse, which was a shift in identity for me, and I was becoming a father as well, which they both go hand in hand. Being a good father is like being a good nurse. It's kind of predicting your child's needs or your patient's needs, and being able to get in touch with them and empathize and perform a caring job and role that's for some doesn't come naturally, but for me it really did. They were going hand in hand with each other, and I'd been exposed to young children and nieces and nephews, throughout my life. So I was used to getting in there and changing nappies and everything that comes along with dadding. And I think the biggest thing for me was so studying. I was doing a unit called maternity nursing, and the assignment that I was luckily able to choose was around the impact of fatherhood, or the father on the developmental outcomes of the children. And the research that I was reading was all about the support network. And I was like, well, I've just moved to Geelong. I don't have friends here. COVID's happening. We're isolated. We're shut down. And I've just disconnected myself from my family of origin. So am I going to have a mental breakdown? Is this what I'm staring at? And I worked really, really hard to look after myself and to find support and to start building friends. And over the last 5 years, my daughter's 5, I'm really proud of the efforts that I've made and the friendships and connections that I've built. And I didn't want that to stop. I looked into, and I was a participant of Working Out Dads, and that's a 6-week program. And I really enjoyed that. And I was like, wow. I was still studying nursing at that time, and I was like, this is what I want to do as a nurse. I don't actually want to be a nurse anymore. I don't want to be in the crisis end of healthcare. I want to be in well-being. I want to be in early parenting. I want to be helping other dads. And that, like I said before, just being one step ahead and learning that information to regurgitate and help others really helped my healing journey and my education and ability to be a better dad and person. And so that's how I got into this. I just sort of fell in love with the industry and hanging out with dads and making friends. And I tried so hard to try and get the organization Strong Dads picked up by a healthcare organization so I could use my nursing skills and not waste my 3 years and thousands of dollars studying. And it's still not happening. I think one of your previous interviewees, the lady who was researching dad, she mentioned that there's this kind of sort of misconception that if you give support to dads, you're going to be taking away from mums. And I think that's still pretty prevalent in the healthcare industry years later. And so that's the kind of culture that I'm coming up against, this big brick wall of, no, we don't want to give money to that. We don't have any money or whatever. So they don't understand that the benefits involved of supporting our dads as well supports the family unit, supports everyone in our community, and reduces the healthcare industry, the burden on the healthcare industry. Anyway, so I think that's why I did it myself, and I'm loving it, and that's why I've started it as a business, and I'm looking at maybe even going further and not potentially being in the hospital anymore.
Great. That's exciting.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, I think be right behind you. So that's I think you touched on how adding in those things as early as possible is obviously going to give the biggest benefit down the line. But I think it's a bit hard when at the end of the day getting resources and funding and everything is very you've got to have an immediate sort of, this will make these differences this year, rather than thinking about 10, 15, 20 years down the track. It's a bit hard to change the way the people that write the checks at the end of the day. But I think you're doing a great job with that.
Thanks, man.
Now more onto the sort of systems and support out there. There's obviously Movember is probably the main sort of organisation in the space of male mental health, and they've been doing amazing stuff. They saw a report, I think it was from their more than a provider report, found that I think it's 3 in 5 new Aussie dads were sort of never asked about mental health throughout the pregnancy or in that first year after the baby was born. How does that, obviously I'm assuming that's you're not going to be too happy about that, but where do we sort of go from there? How do we start to change that?
Good question. I think, I think that's not a shocking number for us blokes. We understand that we're pretty sidelined. And even if there is a bit of a question, it's not maybe as genuine or as empathetic as it could be. I think one of the services that I offer at Strong Dads is a bit more of an educational sort of personal development for clinicians to help maybe audit even their organization to see how they're engaging dads or if they're including dads, because they're not the same thing. Engagement and inclusion, two different things. And like we said at the start, there is this facility-based model of care for dads where they're like, I said it was here, and no one came. And I definitely experienced that. But I also had a really poor experience when I was going through IVF, and one of the organizations I won't name said they had a men's circle available. On the wall there's this bit of paper, and there was an email, and it was a lady, and I emailed the lady and I said, hi, would be very interested in joining this men's circle. And time passed. It was a month until I realized I hadn't gotten a reply, and shot another email through saying, hello, anyone? And she finally replied to that second email and said, yeah, I've just been waiting for other dads to join and no one joined, so we couldn't do it, sorry. But it's not even what I wanted. I didn't want a lady. Like, it takes a man to help men understand their role and their path to guide, So I wasn't even it wasn't even a service or an offering that I was interested in. But again, it was something that they didn't even run if one or two dads were interested. It just weren't enough people involved. And so, again, that's the nuance to my sort of style, is that this is personalized, this is individual-based care, as opposed to, we need a group and we're going to talk to a bunch of you and give you all the same information and good luck with that. So I think what we need going forward is a bit more understanding, flexibility, interest, and sort of willingness to change and to adapt and to lift our community up, because that's what we're trying to do. We're actually trying to do the same thing. We're trying to help everyone be better, not just mums and bubs, but the whole community.
Yes, definitely. I find, again, with the health care services that are currently in as part of the system as you go along, you obviously have your sort of 6-week checkup post-natally with the GP, usually for the mums. But I think I actually talked about, that guest was Norma Barrett that you brought up before, but she was sort of talking about, we should try and get a pretty concrete, hopefully once it gets a bit more into the normalized routine of culture, that actually dads will do it rather than just avoiding it, but some type of checkup after the fact, whether it's a GP or someone that potentially, again, it's not going to help everyone, but just having something there that we know, this is a normal thing that dads do as well as the mums, and it's good for the whole family rather than just focusing on singular. I think is a good maybe good in of taking that burden of, it's not specifically about yourself, even though it is, but it's about how you can help make the family unit, even more healthy and flourishing and all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. I think there's no single answer. There's no silver bullet as you're searching for with all these questions. I don't think there is a silver bullet for that either. And it's that mosaic approach, because I think there's this really funny thing that happens in a lot of industries, but definitely in the fatherhood industry, where there's a bit of competition, and blokes are, pretty stereotypically competitive, especially if there's a hint of toxic masculinity in there as well. And I think everyone's trying to compete with each other and do their thing, and their things is the best, and here, let's do it my way, and come and work for me, and blah, blah, blah. And a few noses get put out of joint because you're doing something that's similar to this other program or whatever it might be. And what I think we actually need to do is work together a bit more and understand that we all have different personalities, and there's enough dads to go around as well. I don't want all the dads. I want the dads that are like me, who are engaged and thoughtful and introverted and intelligent and wanting to work and grow and improve themselves for their family and for their kids and for the community, just to be better people. And not everyone's going to be like that. There are going to be people who just want to, keep it a bit more superficial, but also want to connect with other people who are like-minded. And I hope we can figure it out, because potentially that's what's maybe wrong with the healthcare industry, is that they're just wanting this one way and one answer and one sort of silver bullet. But I don't think that's the answer. I don't think that's right.
Yeah, tricky. And obviously we're going to have, especially like you're saying, the people that are going to be pulled towards your type of program are going to be fairly proactive in general about looking into those things and finding a way in for others that maybe aren't so proactive about their health and everything that's probably quite a big challenge that I think is way above our pay grades. But yeah. So do you have any other advice for, like, obviously the trying to make it less of a one size fits all, but still having options or recommendations for the healthcare industry as a whole that you think might be a good start, or even just starting conversations about specific topics?
Yes. My biggest recommendation, and I think there's a conversation that's happening behind the scenes that we all should be kind of pushing this agenda instead of trying to all do our own thing and trying to find our own niche and fight for engaged dads. Generally, we're all saying, actually, we should ask for this one thing, and that is give dads a UR number. I've got mine right here. I've got my baby's armband, wristband, and I've got mine, which just says partner of written on my wife's wristband. So I didn't actually get my own wristband and my own UR number. Therefore, I wasn't connected to the healthcare system. Therefore, I wasn't connected to the education system because they went through Centrelink, which was connected to Medicare. And so this whole knock-on effect of me being sidelined when I'm the primary parent and actually not the primary provider, but I couldn't actually be acknowledged by those systems. So I think that's where we start, is the UR number is the most important thing, that we get our dads acknowledged, seen, heard. And then someone like me, sorry if I hit my mic just then, in the healthcare system, which is what I was going for first as a dad's nurse, but some feedback was maybe that's a bit too feminine, and so maybe a dad's practitioner is a bit better as a title, where I have a bit of a healthcare industry knowledge, experience, and fatherhood knowledge and experience, and can see and hear you and give you some time and space.
Amazing. The couple of finishing up questions I wanted to bring up. Don't worry, they're not all doom and gloom, but the first one is a bit. So looking ahead, what are you, I guess, most worried about where we're heading with dad's mental health, especially in Australia, and that sort of father-child connection you were talking about earlier?
There's a definite worry around history just repeating itself, and that we sort of do what we know and we stick to the script a little bit, and we don't necessarily reflect and say, hang on, that's not what I want to do. I didn't enjoy that style of parenting, and I want to do better. I want to be better. That would be my biggest concern. The father wound is something that Steve Biddulph talks about, and that's what I'm trying to address. It's really, have you heard a little catchy phrase that I like and have heard is, boys are easy to raise because they're easy to neglect. So
No, I haven't heard of that, actually. That sounds spot on, though.
Yeah. So that's where it starts. When we neglect our own boys, they get used to that. They're not involved in their own education, their own upbringing, their own rites of passage. We don't have anything from a well-structured society that nurtures our boys and children to become responsible young men, because they then fall into the wrong crowd. They are seeking attention from the wrong places. They're looking for their dad, the love of their dad, who is neglecting them and absent and disconnecting with substances or work or other sort of means of just becoming absent. So I think that's that creates that father wound, and that gets passed on into generationally. And if we don't have the people, the lovers, the healers, the fighters who stop and push back and hold up the shield, hence the shield on the Strong Dad's banner, to protect our children from that intergenerational trauma, then it just keeps going. So I don't believe that's going to be the case. There are people like you and me who will keep doing that, and we do have that fire in us, and we will keep talking about it, and it spreads. And it's not going to be everyone, it's not going to affect everyone, but it's hopefully enough to cause some change.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, that you already sort of started answering my next question, to be honest. The flip side of that, yeah, what gives you the most hope at the moment, either from some of the research you've seen or with just, interacting with the dads that you're working with?
For me, I wouldn't keep going with Strong Dads if I didn't have the support from key pillars in my community. It hasn't been... The father wound is generally seeking attention because you didn't get it from your dad, and you might engage in dangerous behavior or high performance and high engagement type activities where you're like, trying to become famous and rich or whatever. Because you're like, look at me now, Dad, trying to get that attention, desperately trying to fill this void in your soul that you haven't been able to stop and reflect on and self-heal or identify. And that's not why I'm doing Strong Dads. There was the first few years of Strong Dads where I wasn't even talking to my parents. And so for me, coming back and connecting back with them in a mature and mutual respecting kind of way has been really good and healing for me as well, because it's not about, here, look what I'm doing. It's about closing a bit of a circle, and it's been good for my daughter as well to start to get to know her grandparents. But where was I going with this?
What gives you hope?
The hope... Thank you. I just got a notification on my phone that I'm low batteries. I'm like, freaking out and distracted, sorry. The hope is, thank you, that these people keep pushing me to do, and it's not my parents saying, yeah, good job, go you, and it's not, that's right. The point of my parents is that there's sometimes a form of attention that comes from performing, and you only get that attention if you perform. And that's not what this is. It's people in my community who are saying, our community needs what you're doing. No, the healthcare industry is not really ready for you right now, or the government. They're not really, the local government, state government, federal government actually kind of are. I've had a couple of conversations with the Special Envoy for Men's Health, Dan Ripicoli, and he is advocating for us in federal government, which is fantastic. So there may be a trickle-down effect that will happen. And, some other state governments or local governments, are engaged. It just takes one key person, but we don't have that person here in Geelong yet. My point is, it is coming. It's a really, culture change is slow and hard, and as challenging as the healing journey, the Wholehearted Dad being a year long, right? Trying to change this culture of support and engagement and education and uplifting our men and dads is slowly getting through, and there are these key personalities who are saying, just do it. I was hoping to get picked up by one of the early parenting centres that I work for called Tweddle, but they're mainly in Melbourne, and they're going through a merger at the moment, and so don't know if that's going to happen after the merger is complete. There'll be a different organisation, and I don't really want to be in Melbourne. This isn't for them. This is for us here in Geelong. So the hint of me doing it myself is, yeah, I've been given some feedback that I need to maybe turn into a charity, and then the healthcare and the local government will be able to engage with me a bit more rather than me being a business. So for me, there is hope personally with Strong Dads, and these individuals, they're becoming either I'm getting into their orbit or there's more coming into my orbit, or both, and I think it's building.
I would definitely agree. I think there's enough of a slow surge, but like you said, it does take time, which is frustrating, but you can't do much about it. You got to be patient at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, for a dad listening who might be recognizing that sort of sensation in himself, either he's stuck, either he's feeling some negative emotions, doesn't know really where to go next. What is a realistic next step that he could take this week?
Geelong specific?
Well, yeah, I mean, he could reach out to you, obviously, but Geelong plus, more broadly as well.
It depends what level of stuff we're talking, what level of crisis, because I am not a crisis organisation. I am a wellbeing organisation. If you're isolated and you wanting to connect and self-improve and self-heal and that sort of thing, just have someone just to hold your hand and talk you through it a little bit, that's me. That's Strong Dads. Give me a call or just send me a text and I'll give you a call and we'll just talk about what's involved as far as going forward. There's no pressure from me. If you're elsewhere from the Greater Geelong region, there are actually quite a few dads organisations around the place, depending on where they are. There is nationally this dads group, and they have random individuals, sort of like myself, who have started dads group just as a volunteer in their area, but they're pretty sporadic and few and far between. There's also then paid organisations. There is Dads in Distress, which is a free organisation that, again, run by volunteers that you can call and have a chat with, in the same vein as Men's Line and Beyond Blue and Panda for slightly more mentally unwell, or just dads who are really mentally struggling. You don't have to be mentally unwell to be struggling, but there's heaps of resources that you can check. So if you go online to that panda.com, you can do a bit of a sort of self-survey. It's for dads specifically. And you can see where you're tracking, and maybe if you are a bit more unwell than you thought, and maybe you do need a bit more help mentally, because like that lady, I've forgotten her name, the previous lady that you interviewed. Norma, thank you. She mentioned in her research that all the dads, when asked broadly about their experiences, they did sort of go into their mental health. That was the natural discussion. So it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just a conversation, and there's lots of organisations to support at various levels and for various needs. The important thing is just to talk.
Perfect. Yep. Great finishing sentiment. I think that's advice that all men and dads can hopefully get a little bit better at. So I really think you're on the money with where your purpose is driving, and I think you're doing an amazing job, mate. Not just around the Geelong area, but I think it's great to have these resources just around so we can get these conversations happening more frequently, which is awesome. So
Thanks,
we've
Aidan.
got obviously your website is a good place to go to check out all of your your details and how you can contact you. Any other social medias or anything else that you are active on?
Yeah, absolutely. There's LinkedIn, there's also the Facebook and the Instagram, and they're all, luckily, Strong Dads Geelong. You can just search for that and you'll find me. I've only just figured out how to do that on Facebook, so 2.5 years later, in fact, probably closer to 3 years. Better late than never.
Yes, exactly. Better late than never. No, that's awesome, mate. Thanks so much for today. I've really enjoyed the chat and your expertise. So keep up the great work, and hopefully we'll chat again.
Thank you. Most definitely. I want to invite you personally to my Father's Day festival, which is going to be happening probably in Leopold, just because that's where I'm based and most of my community is. On I think it's Sunday the 6th of September, and
okay.
I'll put a bit of a plug out here because I'm at the very, very sort of early stages of organising it, but it is going to be a bit of a festival this year. Last year,
cool.
I was working for Dad's Group, and we had 60 people join our fundraiser and walk for a man with a pram. But this year, it's just going to be straight up Strong Dads, and it's just going to be a festival with a bit more of a community mind, maybe even a giveaway and some cool activities as well. So I hope to see you and your fam bam there. And
beautiful.
If not before.
Count me in. Only caveat is I think baby's due about 5 days before that, so we'll have to see how everything's traveling family wise. So
yeah,
I'll say it's definitely if things are all going well, but you'll have to have that caveat as well.
Fair enough. Well, good luck with all that, my man.
Thank you. Thanks, mate.